I call to order the March 12th regular business meeting of City Council. Mr. Hamp, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll remind those in attendance, if you wish to speak during the public hearing or citizens' comment period, there's sign-up sheets in the back of the room. The first item of business is consideration of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Friedman. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Matters from council. Does anybody have anything they wish to present tonight before we get started?
Just let folks know I had the privilege of spending several hours over at Kate Collins Middle School on Friday with some 8th graders, talk about in their civics class and about local government and civic responsibility, and it was just a really cool experience, and would encourage others, if you'd had an interest, to let me know, and I'll get you hooked up to be the next speaker. But it was a lot of fun. So
Great. Anything else?
great group of kids. That's all.
Friday, I had an opportunity to go to the senior center and work with those people some, and it's a really good, some good activities that they sponsor, so you should check it out sometime. I was there, and we just did a little line dance and real simple, fun thing. So I encourage some of you to check out the senior center if you haven't. Okay.
Thank you. Nothing else? We'll move on to 4A is to consider naming March 2018 as Red Cross Month in the city of Waynesboro and present a proclamation to Mr. Bill Brent, Executive Director, American Red Cross. Mr. Hamp.
Mayor Allen and members of council, each year the President of the United States proclaims March as Red Cross Month, providing a chance to honor and celebrate those individuals who assist the Red Cross in which is a charitable organization fulfilling their mission. It may be helpful to know that every 8 minutes the American Red Cross delivers aid, assistance, and hope to those people in need across our nation, and thanks to those everyday heroes who make that mission achievable, whether it's by donating funds, donating blood, or volunteering. The Red Cross depends on citizen support to make a difference in communities across the country. Waynesboro City Council has named March 2018 as Red Cross Month in the city of Waynesboro, and this evening we'll present a proclamation as such, perhaps to Mr. Bill Brent or perhaps to Ms. Pat O'Neill. I've got two names here as potential representatives for the Red Cross. So if Mr. Brent or Ms. O'Neill is present, we'll make sure they get it.
We'll move along.
Thank you.
Pass that back down to the clerk, please. Thank you. Item 4B is to consider naming March 2018 as March for Meals Month in the city of Waynesboro and present a proclamation to Ms. Janice Gentry, Director of VPAS Senior Services. Mr. Hamp.
In March of 1972, President Richard Nixon signed into law a measure that amended the Older Americans Act of 1965 and established a national nutrition program for seniors 60 years and older. For more than 45 years, these critical programs, commonly referred to as Meals on Wheels, have delivered more than just nutritious meals to homebound seniors in virtually every community across the country. And the dedicated staff and volunteers who deliver these meals each week provide vital lifeline and connection to the community, which are sometimes all it takes to keep our senior neighbors at home where they want to be. The Meals on Wheels program and the associated meals served in the Waynesboro Senior Center are provided by the Valley Program for Aging Services, or better known as VPAS locally. Meals on Wheels America created March for Meals campaign to raise awareness of senior nutrition services. This evening, Ms. Janice Gentry, Director of Senior Services for VPAS, is present to receive the proclamation.
Thank you all so much for declaring March the March for Meals Month. VPAS is here to empower those 60 and older with resources and opportunities so that they can lead engaged lives. But one of the things that pulls at our heartstrings most is seniors who don't have proper nutrition, and that can happen for a number of different reasons. Sometimes health changes that happen, and sometimes it's loss of a spouse or something that just they stop eating fully balanced meals and preparing all that. Here in the last fiscal year, we served 140 different Waynesboro seniors over 12,000 meals. And so we really do appreciate your recognition of this service. And I especially want to thank the council for participating in what next week is going to be Community Champions Week, where you'll be delivering Meals on Wheels right alongside of our volunteers and other community champions. VPAS also empowers folks with services such as transportation, Medicare counseling, our senior centers, as Mr. Freeman mentioned, personal care, and health and wellness programs. And if you have any questions about any of those and want more information, or if you want to volunteer for those, just stop by our offices in the Waynesboro Senior Center. They're in the old Jackson Wilson Elementary School up on Pine Avenue. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Jensen.
Thank you.
Item 5A is to hold a public hearing to receive public comments and consider introducing an ordinance granting a conditional use permit upon by Carl Kirby, 3 Flag Ltd., to allow townhouses or multifamily use in the HB Highway Business District at an unimproved property on Village Drive behind 2601 and 2611 West Main Street. Mr. Ham.
Mayor Allen, members of council, the Planning Commission considered this application at its February 20th regular meeting, and by a vote of 6-0 recommended approval with the following conditions. 1, a townhouse or multifamily residential development shall have at least one building fronting on Village Drive, and 2, the height of the proposed townhouses or multifamily buildings shall not exceed 35 feet.
Thank you. Is there a motion to receive the report and recommendations of the Planning Commission?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion?
I just had a question. Were there public comments received as part of this?
Perhaps Mr. Jude can speak to that when he gives the staff report.
Okay.
Anything else? If not, all in favor of receiving the report and recommendations, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5. That report is received. Mr. Jude.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. To address Councilman Schwartz's question, yes, we did receive public comment on it. Neighbors expressed several sort of minor, I would consider them minor concerns around some issues in the area that were not related to the conditional use permit, and then also what the townhouses would look like and kind of what the layout would be. But all of the people who spoke, I think we had 3 or 4 different people speak, and all of them spoke in favor of the project at the end. So.
Okay.
The site in this case is on the west end of the city on West Main Street at Village Drive, just behind it. This is a more detailed map of the site. You have Schul's Furniture Company here, the Speedway, an office complex there. The Animal Hospital's recently purchased this parcel and is improving it at the moment. So this is the property here. It's behind that Speedway and office complex. And as you can see, all this block is zoned HB. That's highway business. Highway business is our most permissive commercial zone. You can put a gas station in, you can put a car wash, you can put any kind of retail. And like I said, the entire block is zoned that way, as most of the parcels go all the way back. But in this particular parcel, it actually fronts onto Village because the front section by West Main is already developed. And right across the street are a number of single-family homes. There's one, as you can see, directly across the street. It's kind of an older, more established neighborhood there. The nature of the request today is that the applicant, Carl Kirby, would like to get a conditional use permit to develop townhomes or multifamily buildings on this site rather than a commercial use. A point of a conditional use permit obviously is to allow some uses that might be appropriate in some circumstances but are not always appropriate in that zone. And he is suggesting here that in this case it would be better to have this as a residential use, and staff agrees with him so far. He's presented a conceptual layout and some drawings to help us understand what it could potentially turn out to be. This is not a site plan. Conditional use permit doesn't require one. Once he has the conditional use permit, if he decides to move forward with building a structure, then he'll have to propose a site plan. It'll have to conform to the zoning ordinance and so forth. But this is what he gave us. This is Village Drive right here. He would have to have front doors fronting onto Village Drive per our code. He can't have a parking lot front onto Village Drive or backyards and grills and everything on Village Drive. He'd have to have frontage on it. And then he would have to shield his parking somehow. The maximum density, or actually I'll get to that in a second. He also provided some sample designs. These are the designs that he's planning to build. Again, he's not bound to this. This is not a site plan submission, but what he's hoping to put together is a two-story, essentially townhouse product. The maximum density that he's allowed in the HB district is 8 units per acre, which is not particularly dense. As you can see in the site plan, he ends up with a lot of open space that he can potentially use for an auxiliary use like a playground or garages that serve the townhomes, but he can't use that to build another development or another commercial building or so forth. That's the max density. As far as the transportation situation, this will create minimal additional traffic, but there certainly will be a few extra cars. A number of the residents expressed concerns about Village Drive and the traffic situation out there. It's a tough left turn out of there onto West Main. Some bad sight lines over on the other side as well. I think it's Stonewall. And we certainly are aware of those concerns, and those are things that the staff is looking at. But those are not affected by this conditional use permit. And when we consider a conditional use permit, what we have to consider it in comparison to is what the other options are for developing it. And because he's getting a conditional use permit for residential, any kind of residential development will be less traffic impact than any of the commercial uses that he could use the site for if he did not get the conditional use permit. So from that perspective, that's how staff evaluates it when saying that there's no traffic problem from it. It's less traffic than if he were to do something else. I think previous proposals on the site have included a car wash and things like that. The site plan will require street improvements because this will be a major site plan. He'll have to put curb and gutter on the street. He'll have to put a sidewalk in and so forth. There's some houses, as I said, immediately across the street. This is Village Drive, and this is several single-family homes that are right there. To try to minimize the impact on those houses, we've said that there can't be any backyards facing the houses from these multifamily buildings. They have to front onto Village Drive. It has to be like a residential feeling street. It does, like I said, there will be impact. We had several people express concerns about just having buildings there across the street from their house, but we have to look at that in comparison to what could be there, which is a commercial building, and most people felt that a residential building would be more appropriate and a better transition from the kind of highway business on West Main down to the single-family homes. And we have kind of a similar situation out in Pelham, too, where you have commercial on West Main, then sort of a buffer zone of townhomes, and then it goes to single-family. And yeah, like I said, compared to the commercial buildings, we'd have reduced infrastructure demands. So for all those reasons, staff recommends approval with the following conditions. First, that you have to have a townhouse or multifamily residential development fronting on Village Drive. Now, we actually already require with townhouses that they front onto there, but if you did a multifamily complex, there's a number of ways you could arrange that. But we just want to ensure that, like I said, there's no backyards, that this, we don't have a poor-looking facade facing onto Village. And then also, we propose that the height of the townhomes or multifamily buildings should not exceed 35 feet. The maximum in this zone with the conditional use permit is 50 feet. He doesn't plan to build anything that's nearly that tall, but just to be safe, we feel that that would not be appropriate right across the street from single-family homes, and so we'd like to add a condition capping it to 35 feet here. Planning Commission considered this proposal and received public comment and recommended passage with a 6-0 vote, including the above conditions. Any questions?
Any questions?
The parcel, if you want to go back a couple slides, I'm sorry, forward one. the existing office complex and the subject parcel, are there shared easements at all between those two parcels? Bless you.
They're both owned by Mr. Kirby, so it's sort of wide open what could happen there. He does not want to put a connection between the two, and actually staff didn't want him to put a connection between the two. We'll have a connection very soon. The animal hospital right here will have a drive that goes all the way through, so there'll already be an additional connection there. And we felt with the residential properties, it'd be better to keep them from having the through traffic.
The interesting thing that I thought of, and I'm supportive of the application, but just for conversations purposes, is that if, because it's the same shared owner, there would be no reason why the same owner would object to having cross access. And so
True.
in terms of future redevelopment, the city, in a commercial context, actually could prevent access to Village Drive, theoretically. So, I don't know where I'm going with that. It's just sort of an observation that,
Yeah.
okay, I don't have any questions.
Are you saying
Anybody
that
else?
are you saying that we should prevent access, or we should allow open?
No, I think it's just in communicating to adjacent property owners, and if you do a direct comparison of, well, if it was a commercial, this would be a higher use, and they'd be dumping onto
Oh,
Village
certainly.
Drive.
Yeah. If it was a commercial development, yeah, we'd probably have a connection.
But that isn't necessarily the case.
Right, yeah.
In all instances.
No, I see where you're going. Yeah.
Is this something that, if approved, he plans to start pretty much right away?
I don't know that he plans to start right away. I think he has a builder contracted, but I'm not sure. Like I said, the conditional use permit isn't a site plan. He would still have to go through that process.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. Oh, hereby, thank you, Mr. Jude.
Thank you. I think Mr. Kirby is out of town, but I believe he has a representative here. I'm not totally sure. Yes, we do. So.
We ready? All right, I'll hereby open the public hearing.
So we do not have speakers signed up. It is our habit, however, to offer the representative an opportunity to speak if they so desire.
See, wish, okay. Then I'll hereby close the public hearing. Here's our motion to introduce the ordinance.
So moved.
Thank you. Item 5B is to hold a public hearing to receive public comments and consider introducing an ordinance authorizing the issuance of general obligation debt not to exceed $21.5 million in the principal for the Waynesboro High School renovation project. Mr. Ham.
So, Mayor Allen and members of council, this is one of the featured items this evening. In order to fund improvement and renovation to Waynesboro High School, it is my recommendation that the City Council ultimately issue general obligation debt, as you mentioned a moment ago, in the maximum principal amount of $21,500,000. The project budget is $21 million, and the $500,000 difference between the project budget and the stated principal authorization is a standard measure to ensure that the city will realize sufficient proceeds to fund the entire project in the event that market conditions and issuance expense factors at the time of issuance produce proceeds of less than $21 million. It is my recommendation that we issue this debt through the Virginia Public School Authority. That is a pooled loan bond or a bond loan program servicing public school districts across the Commonwealth. And we've used a similar vehicle, the Virginia Resource Authority, which is a pooled program for municipal debt not related to schools. We have adopted, as you may recall, several reimbursement resolutions which will allow the city to reimburse itself for expenses related to the project incurred prior to the issuance of debt. It's my expectation that the design work for the project will be completed this spring, and that it's the mutual goal of both the school board and the city council that work on the project begin in some form immediately upon the conclusion of the current academic year. At this meeting, the City Council is asked and is required to conduct a public hearing to receive public input on the proposed issuance of debt. Subsequently, at the March 26th meeting, you'll be asked to adopt an ordinance, which you'll introduce this evening. You must do so by a 4/5 vote, and you will also be asked to adopt a companion resolution authorizing the issuance of the debt. You'll recall, as a practical matter, that last year you approved a tax rate increase on real estate that dedicated 5 cents toward this project. It's my expectation that ultimately the debt service on the $21 million project cannot be entirely satisfied by that 5 cents, and that in several weeks you'll receive a budget recommendation from me that includes an additional increase on the tax rate for real estate, probably on the order of magnitude between 2 and 3 cents. We're still working through what that looks like in terms of the debt service schedule, but it's important for the council and the listening public to know that we're not quite finished generating revenue for this project. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and again, it would be my request to conduct the public hearing and introduce the ordinance this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Hamp. Anybody have any questions? All right. If not, I'll hereby open the public hearing.
No one has signed up to speak.
Then I'll hereby close the public hearing. No other questions. Is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Item 5C is to hold a public hearing to receive public comments and consider introducing an ordinance adopting city's 2018 comprehensive plan. Mr. Jude.
This may come as a surprise to everyone, but we've been working on a comp plan last year. And hopefully we will finish working on it soon. You heard a presentation 2 weeks ago from our consultant, and you got kind of a taste of what he brought to the project. As this is the official public hearing for it, I'll be presenting the comp plan again. So understanding that all of you are very familiar with it by this point, but wanted to, again, for the sake of the public and the listening audience, give a brief overview of it and provide hopefully a little more specific discussion of what the comp plan, what the purpose of it is. I think the comp plan is starting to get thrown around like the Bible a little bit. Everybody knows what's in it, but nobody can exactly explain it. So hopefully I'll explain a little bit what we're getting at with the comp plan. First, what it is, as Mr. Shaw discussed last time, the comp plan is a guiding document. Its value depends entirely on how much buy-in it has from you and from future councils. And the buy-in that it has from you and future councils depends almost entirely on how good it is and how compelling a vision it is. And so it's important that we get it right. And for that reason, you all committed funds to hiring a consultant, to engaging in a public process, to try to involve as much of the community as possible. And it was a great process. We had our last revision in 2008. We're supposed to revise it or look at it again every 5 years. So this time we opted for a complete rewrite rather than a revision. We started off with the steering committee, and I'd like to thank the members of the steering committee that are here in this room. We have quite a few, or several I've noticed, with us. They gave quite a bit of their time to come out to meetings, to educate themselves about the city, and then to lead their own meetings after that. We had a technical advisory committee made up of staff members, who Mr. Shaw thanked last time. And then our steering committee members actually hosted public meetings called kitchen table conversations around the city. We had a number of in-home kitchen table conversations, steering committee members just inviting people to their houses from all walks of the city to have discussions about the city. We also had a lot of open ones hosted by the planning department, hosted by city councilors, and we just had a great response and a lot of very positive feedback. And a lot of very helpful input from those kitchen table conversations. It was, I think, educational for me to see how much people could contribute when they were able to have a longer discussion in a smaller group and all get the chance to talk. Then we worked on the draft throughout the summer and fall. And in fall and November, we held several open houses to unveil the draft to the public. And we got a lot more comments at the open houses and also via email and in writing. And then the Planning Commission held 2 work sessions over the winter to go over all those public comments that we received from the open houses and to edit the document. And I think we have a much better document as a result of their careful attention. Mr. Shaw pointed out that I don't think he's ever seen a public document receive as much scrutiny as the Planning Commission gave the comp plan. So they put a lot of their time into it, and we're very committed to the task. So we appreciate that. As far as what the comp plan is really about and is saying, Mr. Buki mentioned a little bit about kind of where the city is at currently. We're in a very good or very economically dynamic region. We have a very strong fiscal position currently. We have a lot of natural assets at our disposal, and we have a great community. We have a great small town. We're also facing challenges. We're facing challenges like shifting demographics that have caused challenges for our school system as the poverty rate has gone up. We're facing challenges in terms of our competitiveness with localities around us. And as he said, it's not things that any other small town in the country isn't facing as well, but they are things that deserve our attention, that we have to look at and see where the world is headed. The big focus of the comp plan that you've probably heard about a lot is competitiveness. As I said, we're in a strong fiscal position. We've got great core services, strong regional economy. But the landscape for cities is definitely changing. I think we're moving from a time when cities could very much rely on their employers and on their people to be fairly stagnant or to be fairly stable. And so a lot of the decisions in government are more decisions about, what exactly do we want government to do or not do. And today we see that especially smaller cities are challenged to compete a lot more as people and capital become a lot more mobile, as companies become more picky about where they want to locate, and as people have more options, and as people live at a larger radius. It's not the case anymore that you can depend that someone who works in Waynesboro lives in Waynesboro or vice versa. So one of the challenges that we're seeing is a little bit weaker recovery from the recession and difficulty retaining strong households compared to some of our neighbors. Again, not very far behind, but we do need to be cognizant of that. We do need to recognize that people that move to the valley and come because they get jobs in our relatively strong economy here have options of where they can live. And as we move forward as a city, we need to provide a compelling vision to people that makes them want to invest their time and their lives in the city of Waynesboro. And that in turn will make us stronger and make us ready to face the new challenges that we come to. This is just, I think, this is not in the comp plan, but I think it's a helpful illustrative slide about that competitiveness. This is where Waynesboro residents go to work. About 23% of residents in Waynesboro work in Waynesboro. And there may a lot work in Augusta County, a lot work in Albemarle and Charlottesville, a lot work in Stanton and Harrisonburg. Lots of people commute to other places. Conversely, you can see that Waynesboro has about 10,000 employees working in the city. Only about 22% of them live in Waynesboro, and the rest are coming from Stewart's Draft, from other places in Augusta County, from Stanton and Harrisonburg, even from Albemarle and Charlottesville. So we live in an integrated region. When people think about where they're going to live and work, they usually think about it in a 30-minute radius, and they have plenty of options. So we have to think about what it is that we can offer. So how do we compete as a city? The first step to competing, I think, is to have a vision that plays to our strengths. And I think we made a great step forward in this 2 weeks ago when the council adopted a resolution with a vision for the city. And when we think about vision, we want to think about what we have to offer that no one else does. My dad, when I was a kid, because he was a business guy, made me read one of those Strengths Finder things or whatever they were. But it was basically about how you should focus on your strengths, what you have to offer, and you just try to shore up your weaknesses as well. But a lot of people focus on their weaknesses all the time and drag down that we don't have this, and we don't have a good that, and that a better strategy in any market is to say, what do you have to offer that no one else does, and how can we make the most out of that? And so we talked in that vision statement about how Waynesboro has an incredible natural setting. It has access to things that no other city in the region or often even in the country can ask. We have an amazing river in the South River flowing right through downtown. We have great parks. We're right at the foot of the Blue Ridge Mountains. We talk about that all the time. And we have this great location in reference to our neighbors around us. So how do we come up with a vision that plays to that strength? We also compete by taking actions that are consistent with our values. So a lot of our time in the comp plan was spent not down in the weeds saying which project do we do or not do, but talking about what are the big picture ideas that we need to embrace going forward. And these were the values that the steering committee and staff and the consultant came up with. First, that we're prudent, that Waynesboro has always and will always act in a cautious manner, thinking carefully about the future and making its decisions carefully, future in mind. We're family friendly. We care about setting up a city that is a great place to grow up in. We're entrepreneurial. We have a can-do spirit. We look for ways to make ourselves better and to as the focus of the plan is, compete better. And we're independent. We're self-reliant, and we don't think that our problems will be solved by people outside of the community. And then we also have a strong pride of place. That was something that came out in a lot of the discussions, that people in Waynesboro sense something special about the geography and care about both embracing it and about being able to stay here and having a solvent and city with a bright future so that they can remain in this place. We also do it then by carefully investing in ourselves. Mr. Buki talked about the need to invest in yourself, and that is important, and that was a focus of a lot of the discussion. It's also important to point out that you can't do everything. I think Mr. Hamp said at one point that we can do anything with the resources that we have, but we can't do everything. So one of the goals of the steering committee was to actually look at a lot of the projects that we talk about all the time and say, what is a set of projects that would be achievable? A lot of comp plans try to put together just a list of what everybody wants so that you don't offend everybody, so that we have everybody satisfied by their stuff being in the comp plan. The aim of this comp plan was not to do that. It was to force the steering committee and staff and everyone involved in the process to say, okay, you can't afford everything. What are the most important things? And so I think we've put together a set of projects that will be transformative for the community and that are difficult, but are all achievable. It's not a pie-in-the-sky list of things. It's a list of things that we can get to. And by that same token, going forward, we need to work on improving all these areas. We also need to keep in mind that we need to make these decisions carefully, that we have limited resources, and that when we are looking at decisions of how we can spend those resources, we need to say, does this make us more competitive? Does this fit those values? Is this a prudent use of our money? Does this make us more family-friendly? Does this take advantage of our pride of place? So they broke it then down into 5 areas that we could work on and kind of put together a set of achievable projects in each of those 5 areas. The first big one is education, and that includes physical improvement. Obviously, just received a discussion about and just introduced a motion to fund a renovation of the high school. It's a crucial element of this. There will also be issues in the future with elementary schools. And then also operational improvement, making sure that we have a system set up that attracts the best teachers and allows our students to succeed in a time when they are dealing with demographic challenges. The second big way is by taking advantage of our incredible natural resources. And this is not something that we look at and say, oh, well, some things and I think the temptation a lot of times in our discussion is to say, well, this isn't very good in Waynesboro. What we need to do is shore up that. And we do need to do some of that. But this is a situation where we say, well, this is actually very good in Waynesboro already. But this is something that we could actually hang our hat on. This is something that we can look at and say, Stanton doesn't have this. Charlottesville doesn't have this. Harrisonburg doesn't have this. They don't have the kind of natural beauty and the kind of recreational assets that we do. And so we talk about the Sunset Park and that 360 view of the Shenandoah Valley. We've got Constitution Park and the DuPont settlement funds that'll be creating an amazing new downtown center anchor for the city. And the South River Greenway Trail, which has been incredibly successful already, continuing to expand that. I think that we have the ability to be the only city in the country where you can walk out of your door down a trail or bike or walk down a trail, down a beautiful river, all the way up to the Shenandoah National Park, one of the most visited national park in the country at some point. And that's something that is a quality of life thing that nobody else can match, and that creates value for your citizens. And that in turn inspires people to want to be here and to want to stay here. The third way that we compete is by taking care of our most visible corridors and public spaces. So, a big theme that came up, and Mr. Buki talked a lot about the housing stock and investment in private housing stock, but a big theme as well was investment in the public corridors. And we have quite a few beautiful public spaces and beautiful private spaces around the city, but they're often not the spaces that are most visible to people as they come through town. And I think that's important because, you can, it's not that great to spend all your time cleaning up your bedroom if your foyer is a mess. And that's a little bit of our situation in some places. And so a focus of this comp plan is to say, what are the places that people see that give them their image of Waynesboro? And what can we do to try to improve those places by, again, using our public spaces to create a value for the residents who live around them and that spills over to them. So that includes projects like increased funding for sidewalks and median work, more streetscaping, trees, and doing things that will improve those main corridors. Then the fourth way that we need to compete is by building a firm floor in the market through property maintenance. Mr. Buki talked about this quite a bit. But, you know, every city has a continuum. We talked a little bit in the council retreat how every city has a continuum from sort of the high externality, high freedom, live and let live attitude, which is great because people don't pick on you for, you know, your yard not being mowed, but then also there's negative effects of that. To kind of on the other end of the spectrum is the ridiculous homeowners association, where you can't have like red curtains because just don't match everybody. So somewhere in that continuum is every city, and there can be neighborhoods at different places on that continuum. We've in general been on that live and let live side of the continuum, and the discussion in the comp plan was to move a little bit more towards the middle, trying to build a better floor through property maintenance. Sometimes we get pushback to this from people who are worried about, why, you know, I take care of my house, are you going to come after me for this or that? The issues that we're talking about in the comp plan are almost never anything to do with homeowners. We have had a few homeowners in the past who we've had property maintenance issues with, and generally building and zoning has always worked with them and worked with the CDBG money to try to provide them assistance. It's usually elderly people who are not able to do upkeep themselves. But the vast majority of the issues that we're talking about and dealing with are absentee landlords. And again, you can't even really blame the renters either. It ought to be the landlord's job to maintain that property to the same level as their neighbors. But when you lose that little bit of connection or that little bit of pride that comes with living in the city, a lot of times that slips quickly, and it becomes just simply a balance sheet issue. And where that happens, it's the city's job to come in and say that we can't make everyone take care of their property and do the right thing, but we can make sure that it's not profitable to trash the city. So that's the goal of the property maintenance thing. And that's important because when you have a set of houses, and some of them are great and some of them are not, they affect one another because we live close together in cities. And so those spillover effects have to be dealt with. And then the last way that we need to compete is by monitoring and reducing our exposure to economic risk. One of the biggest ways that we are at risk at a certain level is through our success in getting sales and meals tax out at X94 and through a lot of our other corridors. We've managed to capture a lot of the regional retail traffic in the area, which has been great for our bottom line. But just like people looked at DuPont 20 years ago and said, that'll just always be there, it is what it is. People look at Walmart and say, that'll always be there, it is what it is. It's not always going to be there. Every big box store has a life cycle. Every building depreciates. You can see all around town older strip malls that are past their prime and are not producing the revenue that they once did. And it would be different if we were in a very densely built out area and those, you know, the stores had to be there. But we're not. And there are plenty of other localities near us who have already zoned and subdivided and put in utilities and tried to get those stores to come there. And when they're looking at at renewing and reinvesting, or when the new stores come in, those places will be attractive. Not to mention, as Mr. Short pointed out, the effect of online sales on retail. So we have to be cognizant of that. The recommendation from Mr. Buki was to think more about our real estate taxes covering our core services, that the value of homes is our real asset. That's what is lasting. And that's what hopefully is going to cover police officers and schools and things like that. And to look at revenue from things like sales and meals tax is more volatile, but more useful to try to invest in more experimental or entrepreneurial things that will try to create new streams of revenue once they're gone. So, and also we can, by improving the city and by improving the look of the city, by improving quality of life in the city, you ensure that more of these people stay because they have to be here rather than somewhere else. You know, the Waynesboro location actually does create value. And that's what we want to get to. You know, we want to get from a place where people want to locate in Waynesboro or businesses locate in Waynesboro because we give them an incentive, because we pay them to be here, to a place where they need to be here, where we are a city that they need to be located in because that's where people want to be. And this includes other projects as well. Talked about ensuring that we have utility coverage to our industrial park and other things that will help ensure our long-term economic resilience. So those are the kind of the 5 big areas, and I think when we put all those together, they really encapsulate the main ways that Waynesboro could become more competitive. And I think by implementing this plan and by seeing it as achievable and beginning to work towards it, we've already got a number of things from the plan in the budget for the next year that we can help ensure that Waynesboro is on the upswing. And I think we already are. Even looking at demographic data from this past year, we see the city becoming stronger. We're attracting residents, and I think that we're at a crucial point where that could pick up or slow down. And now is the time to ensure that we lock in the city's future success for the next generation. So, any questions on the specifics of the plan? I'm happy to answer.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Juday. I'll hereby open the public hearing.
We have one individual signed up to speak, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Marcia Geiger.
Give us your name and address, please.
Marcia Geiger, 701 Locust Avenue. I want to commend the city on this comprehensive plan. It is excellent. It is straightforward. It tells us all the things we need to accomplish in this city to make it even better than what it is right now. We have to focus on our schools, yes, because what is the first thing that a prospective resident looks at? Our school system. And yes, it either makes or breaks their decision to move here or somewhere else. Our buildings are so important, but our teachers are equally as important. We need to have strong teachers in order to maintain the level of education that we want for all of our children. Yes, we want to increase our property values here. We want to take pride in our neighborhoods here. I've lived in the city for almost 38 years, and I can say I love living here, and I know that this is something all of us want, is to improve our city at all times. And our other focus, too, needs to be, yes, on our parks and trails. They are wonderful assets. We live in an incredible part of the country. I travel quite a bit, and when people ask where I'm from, that's the first thing they comment, how beautiful this part of the country is and how lucky we are to live here. Yes, and to that point, I want to say that one of the things that's talked a lot about in our plan is some of the assets we have. Our river. We need to use that. We need to enhance the river. It needs to be an absolute asset. Yes, you all have seen me here talking about greenways, so you know I'm going to mention that tonight. I want to see this city and the greenway to be using the river to its fullest extent, not to be promoting that into an area that doesn't need to be. The river is a great asset. It's something other cities would kill to have running through it. I'd like to see that to be used to its fullest extent. We're at a critical point in the city's future, and this plan has given us the tools we need to move forward and place us in a good place as we go forward. I certainly recommend that this council adopts it. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else? We'll hereby close the public hearing. Any questions or comments from council members?
I would just echo, I think, Mr. Day's earlier comments and deep appreciation to all the stakeholders and the hundreds of local residents that participated through kitchen table conversations and other forms of public input. And I'm certainly pleased with the process. We started off with a goal of getting this thing done in a year, which is not often a very achievable goal. And I think it's a testament to the quality of our staff and the process and the consultant team that we did that in a year. We did what we said we were going to do, so I very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Anything else?
I would just like to say that I'm real pleased with our participants in this comprehensive plan, and I really appreciate the fact that council, it's a different council than I've been on for almost 8 years. It's really nice that we don't always agree, but we always talk. And I think some of the small things that have been mentioned that are big in the eyes of residents as well as people who visit is the fact that the way our city looks. And I know thanks to, so to speak, leadership of Mayor Allen, I feel like we've spent many days riding around a car looking at places and see things that might need to be improved. And I want to thank the council for buying in, so to speak, to this plan and taking it on to help generate what we need in this community. So I want to thank everyone for that.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Anything else? All right, is there a motion to introduce the ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Item 6 is a presentation of Blue Ridge Community College 2017 Annual Report by Dr. John Downey, President of BRCC. Dr. Downey.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for this opportunity to come before you and speak. Comprehensive plan looked ahead. I'm going to take you down a little trip down memory lane. We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Blue Ridge Community College. So I was wondering how many of you remember where you were in the summer of 1967. Maybe a few of you were in San Francisco. Let's see. That's it. There you go. Celebrating the summer of love in your Volkswagen Beetle with some of your friends. Or maybe a couple of you were driving around the Shenandoah Valley in your shiny new red 1967 Ford Mustang. And I suspect that more than a few of you were members of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. But maybe, perhaps like me, back then you just preferred hanging out at home, sucking your thumb with the rest of the family. While we were doing all those fun things, there was a group of dedicated, forward-thinking people in the mid-1960s who stood on about 75 acres of rich farmland in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, just off the new interstate, in tiny Weir's Cave. And they shoveled some dirt around, planting a different kind of seed that would produce a rich crop for generations to come. None of it would have occurred at that location at that time if it wasn't for Cletus and Charlotte Houff. They had the visionary idea to work with the Commonwealth of Virginia to locate the new idea of a communities college on their farmland. This evening, I would like to take you back on a journey in time. I want to show you how much has changed since those visionary days in the late 1960s, but also how much the vision, mission, and impact of Blue Ridge Community College have all remained consistent over all these years. For 50 years, our focus has been to improve the lives of people in this community through the miracle of a higher education. Back then, it looked like a lot of land to us. We started with just a few simple buildings to house what they anticipated would be only a few hundred students. 500 showed up the first week, and we had close to 1,000 by the end of the first academic year. Those original buildings still exist to serve the needs of our students today. But the land is just a bit more crowded, and the college now serves almost 10,000 students per year in credit and non-credit workforce, personal enrichment, transfer, and community service programs. Almost from the beginning, parking was a problem, and it still is, though the cars aren't as cool looking as they were back then. And our new parking deck does alleviate some of the issues. The first college catalog had a purpose statement instead of a mission statement and a big picture of the president. Thankfully today, the catalog has a much smaller picture of the president and a more prominent mission, vision, values, and strategic question statements. I don't think students have changed all that much. They loved to have fun back then, and they still like to have fun today. Our faculty and staff have also been known to have fun once in a while. But mostly, we're focused on the much more serious task of preparing our students for the next phase of their lives, whether that be heading directly into the workforce or transferring to one of our partner four-year colleges and universities. To prepare them best, our students have always used the latest equipment, and they still do. Class enrollment was impressive from the start, and look at all those males in the class. Today, 60% of the student body is made up of women. Our original group of employees were also largely male, whereas today we have a larger, more diverse range of individuals serving student needs. We've gone from teaching on typewriters to word processors with floppy disks, to desktop computers, to slimmer desktop computers, to laptops with monitors, to bring your own devices from home, and finally to iPads and cell phones. It's hard to imagine what technology may be coming next. Professional attire in many of our programs we teach has changed as well. This was one of our earliest nursing classes around 1984. And here are some of our more recent nursing students. Technology has changed in our programs as well. This automotive student was referring to an old printed manual to repair a car. Today's automotive students look up manuals online and use sophisticated electronic tools to diagnose problems. Early drafting classes use hand tools with precision measuring instruments, whereas today, computer-aided drafting allows students to see images from multiple angles and print plastic 3D prototypes of the items they create on the computers. The college library has changed from an area where there used to be a lot of shelves and a few tables for quiet study to an area now with fewer shelves and more computers for online research with computerized databases. Our Student Services Office used to have snaking registration lines to help students sign up for classes, and paper and pencil registration sign-up procedures. Today, greater numbers of students use self-service to sign up for classes at home. New students access advisors through structured group advising sessions in the high schools, and the college provides individualized attention in our enrollment zone for students who need extra help filling out forms. The cafeteria has long served as a gathering place for students and employees, and it continues to serve as a place to socialize and study. Outdoor spaces have also been important for our students, sometimes for recreational activities, and sometimes for instructional activities. Many students have assumed leadership positions over the years as part of the Student Government Association. In 1973, that would earn you a picture in the paper. In 2017, you get your picture taken by the president. But I'm very grateful that the issues have changed a lot over the years. The college has long offered students the opportunity to join clubs and organizations or to participate in intramural sports. Today, students can participate in a wide variety of fitness activities in a modern state-of-the-art recreational facility right on campus. The cafeteria used to house old pinball and foosball machines. Pinball is gone now, but the foosball and pool tables are in the recreation center today. The campus commons holds particular historical significance for Blue Ridge. In the early years until the mid-2000s, the commons was a parking lot offering patrons close proximity to campus buildings. Dr. Perkins, my predecessor, had the foresight to convert that parking lot into a grassy campus commons. Today, we use that area for Welcome Week and orientation activities. This year, our Welcome Week occurred during the great eclipse of 2017. The campus commons serves as a centerpiece of activity for our students throughout their academic lives at the college. And we hold commencement there to celebrate their achievements as well. When we celebrated the college's 50th anniversary with employees on campus, we gathered at the top of the entrance driveway, another highly symbolic location at Blue Ridge. For 5 decades, countless students have driven down this road in search of a better life. They've entered this road over many years and in many seasons, no matter what the weather, like today. And in recognition of his significant contribution to the lives of so many of those students, we dedicated a road that intersects with that main driveway in honor of Waynesboro resident Dr. Jim Perkins, my predecessor. We have so much to celebrate and be grateful for at Blue Ridge Community College, and certainly top among them is the support that all of you have shown us as city council members, which has been instrumental not only now but throughout the 50-year history of the college. Foremost among that is your duty to appoint representatives of the city on my local board. And Joyce Coleman and John Matherly are here tonight representing the city of Waynesboro on my board. And I just can't say enough about how grateful I am of the caliber of people that you appoint to that board. I also want to thank City Manager Hamp and Greg Hitchin, who I work very closely with. I chair the Shenandoah Valley Partnership for Economic Development, and Greg and I work closely together on that organization for the benefit of the city and the surrounding regions. I am most grateful for our employees and for our students who make Blue Ridge Community College such a special place, and that has always been true. You know, they say that time changes every person, but I don't think so. I've hardly changed at all in the 25 years I've been privileged to work at Blue Ridge. Here's a recent picture of me in 2017, and this is what I looked like back in 2001 with my daughter, Nicole. Many things have changed over the past 50 years, but this great college will continue to consistently serve the needs of our students and our communities for decades to come. Thank you for your support. It was really an honor to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Dr. Downey?
I would just like to make a comment. For people that don't know, Dr. Downey attends many events, a lot of meetings that we go to, and local legislative meetings, and he talks on behalf of seeing what they can do as a college to help us. I know he's talked about programs that Blue Ridge has that might help us with employees for our industrial park and things like that. So those meetings and legislative breakfasts that you attend and give a presentation like this one, but very informative, means a lot to our community, and sometimes we probably don't even realize what's being done. So thank you for your service and your help.
Appreciate that so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Always enjoy your reports.
Appreciate that.
Item 7 is to consider appointing a candidate to the Regional Youth Commission for an unexpired 3-year term ending August 31st, 2020. Mr. Hamp.
Mayor Allen, I might share a quick story on the doctor before he leaves, following up on your comment that when I was early in this position and he was early in his, he called once in preparation for a presentation, and I told him that you should keep it to 5 to 8 minutes. And he told me, well, I'm not sure I can do that. And I said, you need to send material in advance so we can include it in the packet. And he said, well, I'm certainly not going to be able to do that. And I said, well, you should at least give me some idea of what you're going to present. And he said, I'd rather not do that. So even early on in our relationship, I found him to be a trusted colleague, and I had confidence. But I hung up the phone and thought, well, if you want to disregard the advice and counsel of the city manager, do so, but proceed at your own risk. And I've never been more pleased that somebody chose not to follow my guidance, because like you, I find his presentations both entertaining and informative. So we're fortunate to have him as a partner.
Does a fantastic job.
Our next item is to consider appointing an individual to the Regional Youth Commission. Ms. Carolyn Alderman has presented her name and candidacy for consideration. If appointed, she would fill an unexpired 3-year term concluding August 31, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Hamp. Is there a motion to appoint Mrs. Carolyn Alderman to the Regional Youth Commission?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Marks. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you. You have anything under communications, correspondence, and calendar?
Not this evening, sir.
Citizens' comment period?
No one has signed up to speak.
All right. I think you've requested a closed meeting, Mr. Hamp.
Yes, sir, I have.
Do we have a motion to conduct a closed meeting?
Mr. Mayor, I move this meeting be recessed and the City Council of Waynesboro immediately reconvene in a closed meeting for the following purposes. Discuss the disposition of real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating strategy of the public body as authorized by Section 2.2-3711A3 of the Freedom of Information Act, Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended. The subject matter of the meeting is acquisition or disposition of real estate relating to Waynesboro High School, economic development, and NERDA.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Ms. Boyle, roll call.
Mayor Allen?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Short?
Aye.
Councilman Freeman?
Aye.
Councilman Marks?
Aye.
Councilwoman Anderson?
Aye.
All right, we're in closed session. Thank you. That we return to open session.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the following resolution. Whereas the City Council of Waynesboro has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires certification by the City Council that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of Waynesboro hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification resolution applies. And 2, only such business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by City Council of Waynesboro.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. All in favor? Roll call, Ms. Bortle.
Mayor Allen.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Short.
Aye.
Councilman Freeman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Anderson.
Aye.
Councilman Marks.
All right, we're back into open session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you.